What's up, everybody? How are things going in your neck of the woods? Around here, we got a little rain. I don't know if you can see. Oh yeah, that that wheelbarrow's pretty full, which is not common for our neck of the woods, but it is nonetheless a blessing if you are trying to grow food. And I got up this morning, and it's the first day that the sun has been really shining in the morning here in what feels like a while. It's been 3 or 4 days of just dang near solid rain. But I felt compelled this morning to do a quick little video on 3 or 4, maybe, I don't know, a couple different ways for you to think about putting in a garden. If you're thinking about putting in a garden, there's lots of choices. We've got a couple different methods, in practice here, and I wanted to show them to you and give you some advice on which ones I like and why I like them and what's different about each system. So that's what's coming up next. I'm getting ready to go here, and the cat came running through, headed up to her kittens, and the birds are not too happy that she's walking through the yard. Oh, that was funny. Anyway, before I show you these, I want to tell you this. It's not too late. Okay, like I'm telling you, it's not too late. You can do this still. You can grow a garden. Okay, because here's the thing: there are lots of things that grow in a very, very short cycle. There are things that grow in the spring that you can also replant in the fall. Whatever work you do now is going to carry over for years to come, which is, I'll show you in the first example here. So if you've been debating this, if you've been thinking about it, if you've been on the fence and you're kind of like, well, I wish I would have, but I didn't yet, it doesn't matter. Do it now. You can still do it. Just start it. You get some things in the ground, you'll start growing, and as time goes on, you'll get better and better at it, just like I have. The spaces in which you are growing your food will just get better and better, especially if you do things in kind of an organic, natural sort of a way. It's just, there's not ever a bad time to start. So I don't care when you have found this video, go do it. You can do it right now. Go start a garden. Let's go take a look. Okay, so this first method is the one that's been behind me through the whole start of this video. It was my original garden when we came to this piece of property, and we call it the food forest. Okay, and I'm going to turn the camera around so we can walk through there, and I'll talk you through why I call it the food forest, kind of the basic premise behind it. And we can just take a look at what's going on in there. Okay, so this is the food forest. Now, the overarching premise of this space is plants that return. So perennial plants that come back year after year after year. You'll notice as we walk through here that there are just all sorts of plants, most of which I haven't planted this year. They just came back and are producing food again. Okay, so in this space we have blueberries, honeyberries, pluot trees, grapes, loads of raspberries, 2 different kinds actually. We used to have strawberries. We just have all sorts of food, lots of herbs that come back year after year. And then we use all of the spaces in between all of that to plant in our annual vegetables to round out the space. Okay, the space is dominated by heavy mulching everywhere. And right now I have 2 main things going with that. We have all of the leftover wood chips from the past couple years, and right now I'm in the process of top dressing all of that with some hay waste that I scrape up out of the hay sheds at my father-in-law's farm. Okay, so this is all hay scraps basically that were on the ground. And especially after a rain like this, it's like walking on a sponge. Like, it's just so soft and wonderful as a mulch, and it's really, really thick. So right now it's just absolutely saturated after all of this rain. Like, you saw the rain in that wheelbarrow puddle. There is no puddles in this garden because everywhere that this mulch is, it just soaked up the water like a big sponge. Okay, all of the beds are defined by simple borders, most of which were recycled materials, pieces of old sheds that were laying around here, old logs from trees that we cut down, whatever I could find, just specifically to define walking spaces versus growing spaces. And then all that happens is every year we top up the beds with more and more compost. So you can see this bed needs some compost because I haven't topped it up in that spot yet. So there's some space, but just around the corner here, it is completely topped up clear to the top and full of good growing soil. I just moved the bucket that I have holding my greenhouse door shut, and you can see one of the benefits. This deep mulch method. Okay, this area is just completely loaded with all sorts of beautiful worm activity, like these little guys here. These red wiggler composting worms just love this deep mulch. The big earthworms have started to come in now too. And so we just end up with all of, like, that's essentially worm castings all around them. Look, there's more worms there. Like, this whole garden is like that. And so all of these mulch areas end up just creating soil. I stepped into that greenhouse that we have down here just for a minute, mostly because it's nice and warm in here. It's already pushing 60 degrees. It's a little cooler outside, and maybe there's a little less noise from the wind and the cars driving by. But the premise of this space to me is pretty simple. Everything here, and I mean everything about this space, is about creating soil. But I don't work at it overly hard. I just sort of let it happen. The paths are creating soil. The worms that live there, they're making soil, they're increasing fertility, they're converting waste wood chips and waste hay and fall leaves and whatever else I put in those paths. They are converting them into nutrients for the soil that's feeding this entire garden, which is why now I've been able to start adding in things like trees and more perennial bushes and herbs and things like that that have more expansive root systems that can reach out from the growing beds a little bit and take advantage of what's there, as opposed to the annual vegetables that we plant around this space. Now don't get me wrong, this space is full of annual vegetables. You saw in the videos, right? Like, I'm in the greenhouse here, we got tomatoes growing, there's basil in here, there's some volunteer dill in here that I'm gonna let grow. There's lots of things that are annual down here because they fill in the spaces in between the perennial stuff. But this garden at the moment is basically kind of like set it and forget it, right? Like, I put the plants in the ground in the spring when it's their time to go in. We kind of tend them and try to keep the bugs in check as best as we can, but minimal fertilizer applications. I mean, it just grows. More than anything, I add compost. I put compost in the fall, I put compost in the spring. We just keep adding more and more food for the soil, and it's just been insane how this area has changed. So the first method is the one that I've been rambling on about, and that is a deep mulch in-ground growing system with permanent beds where you just keep raising the soil level by adding more and more beautiful compost year after year. You don't dig anything, you don't turn anything. Weeding is very minimal. You just kind of have this beautiful space to grow food that literally gets better year after year. So, first method, deep mulch above ground growing.